Hello, Kuwakashiboto, Kwajoto, Karibu, for warm welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and a very warm welcome to the Alliance for Financial Inclusion virtual webinar on conducting demand-side surveys, the case of Kenya's FinAccess Household Survey 2021 in the COVID-19 era. I am Luis Treviño, the Senior Policy Manager on Financial Inclusion Data at AFI, and I will be your MC and moderator for today's virtual webinar. We would all have wished to join together in the beautiful landscape of Kenya, even perhaps visiting and sightseeing the five big. But given the prevailing health circumstances in many regions, AFI is still keeping some important events as this one in a virtual format as we strive to a gradual transition into a more physical event. In these regards, we want to sincerely appreciate the overwhelming response we have received for this virtual webinar, noting the relevance that data and measurement have for evidence-based policies in our network. And we also want to thank the Central Bank of Kenya for co-hosting this event alongside the other three relevant institutions in Kenya, FSD Kenya, and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Without further ado, let us listen to Dr. Alfred Hanig, Executive Director from the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, to deliver his welcome note on behalf of the AFI network.
Dr. Noroge, Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Karibu Wapenda, welcome once again, distinguished friends from Kenya and the AFI network to this webinar. Allow me to congratulate the Central Bank of Kenya, the CBK again, and its partners, the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the KNBS, and FSD Kenya on the successful completion of the 2021 FinAccess Survey. Kenya continues to be at the forefront of fostering financial inclusion. And having said that, I would like to add that the Central Bank of Kenya has not only been highly engaged in the AFI network as a member, for quite some time. CBK, as you remember, also hosted the very first Global Policy Forum in Nairobi back in 2009. That was actually the foundation of the success of our network. And we also have other members from Kenya, including the Sacco Society's Regulatory Authority, SASRA in Kenya, and also the Retirement Benefits Authority of Kenya. All AFI members who have made great strides in achieving a broad range of financial inclusion goals. A few words on the demand-side surveys. These are a very critical instrument to measure the status of financial inclusion, to set a baseline for policymakers setting up a national strategy, and to measure progress in access, usage, and quality of financial services following policy interventions. We all know that data is key in informing policymaking, which is the reason why more than half of AFI member institutions have launched or have promoted the launch of financial inclusion demand-side surveys. We have indeed noticed that members that have set measurable targets, those members have performed better at achieving their financial inclusion objectives compared to members that have not put in place data frameworks. Now, the 2021 Kenya FinAccess Survey has borne witness to the transformation of Kenya's financial inclusion landscape and its increasing formalization underpinned by the adoption of digital technology. But the survey also highlighted the continued use of informal financial services alongside formal ones and providing data on informal businesses, which are a major source of livelihood for many Kenyans, in addition to agriculture. It is also the first survey to include financial inclusion representative data at a country level for all Kenya's 47 counties. Additionally, let me also note that the survey was conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic, causing operational challenges to respondents and interviewers. A total of 22,024 households across Kenya provided data on their financial needs, their financial health, and also on inclusive green finance. This last component measured the vulnerability of the population to climate change related events and how they affect disadvantaged groups, such as women and the youth. AFI was happy to support the CBK and other partners to enable the conduct of this survey, and we are of course very proud that this survey will also complement the regularly collected supply-side data to enable formulation of evidence-based policies in Kenya, but it can also be shared with other members, which I think is extremely important for those countries who would like to follow suit these experiences. It is actually not my role now to go back to the findings or the preliminary findings of the survey, but let me just highlight that we found it quite impressive that formal financial inclusion in Kenya, as measured by the access dimension, expanded to 83.7% in 2021 from just 26.7% in the baseline survey conducted in 2006. That's enormous progress. The other point I want to mention is extremely crucial for AFI, which is on the gender gap. The gender gap has been reduced consistently in the long run, yet with a slight reversal during the pandemic, which I think other countries have also seen. But all in all, we are very happy to see that the gender gap over time narrowed down from 8.5% in 2016 to 4.2% in 2021. That's enormous progress. And finally, let me also say a word on mobile money. Mobile money users are using this service daily at twice the rate it was in 2019. That's another great indicator that now came through again in the 2021 Kenya FinAccess Survey. This survey will not only help Kenya authorities in their forthcoming financial inclusion policy implementation, it will also serve as a model and example to other AFI member institutions, as I said. And I take this opportunity to urge all participants in this webinar to take really a close look at the 2021 FinAccess Survey report and the tools that were used in conducting the survey. As always, AFI stands ready to facilitate any further learnings between the CBK and other AFI members. Finally, I wish to congratulate the Central Bank of Kenya, the Kenya Bureau of National Statistics, the KNBS, and FSD Kenya on the achievement. And I wish you fruitful deliberations during the webinar. Thank you all.
Thanking our Executive Director, welcome note. It is our honor and pleasure to welcome Honorable Dr. Patrick Njoroge, Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, to deliver his welcoming remarks. Honorable Governor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Luis and Alfred Hanin. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the CBK AFI webinar on Kenya's FinAccess Survey 2021. At the outset, let me acknowledge the support we have received from the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, AFI, one of our worthy partners in formulating and executing the survey. Indeed, AFI has worked with the Central Bank of Kenya over the last 13 years in Kenya's financial inclusion transformation journey. We are particularly grateful for the opportunity today to share the survey with a breadth of AFI members. More importantly, we look forward to drawing from their varied experiences to enhance the survey and our other financial inclusion initiatives. A useful starting point would be asking ourselves why surveys such as this matter. At CBK, our vision is to be a data-centric organization that drives insight, facilitates efficient oversight, and informs well-researched policy through credible data. This is a vision that is embraced by many of the central banks and other institutions represented here. The COVID-19 pandemic has only served to accentuate the importance of data, science, and facts. It has become even more evident that good data is essential to making informed, prudent, and credible decisions. The pandemic has tested the effectiveness of traditional data sources, and policymakers have had to step up to fill the gaps. Policymakers have, during the pandemic, increased the use of faster indicators, such as mobility data or granular payments transactions. At CBK, we have had to turn to new, higher frequency data sources during the pandemic. This includes hotel surveys to gauge recovery through occupancy levels in the hotels and accommodation sector, flower farm surveys assessing recovery through export orders and employment levels, CEO surveys, which we introduced during the pandemic to gauge, among others, business confidence and risk perception. And then our Monetary Policy Committee Perception Survey, which is the regular survey covering commercial banks and other private sector actors on their perception of key economic issues, including inflation and growth. During the pandemic, it was enhanced to obtain pandemic-related information and extended coverage of private sector firms. A key milestone in CBK's journey towards data centricity was the launch last week on February 25 of the Electronic Data Warehouse, EDW. EDW is a strategic and transformative initiative that gives CBK an opportunity to become a data-driven central bank through automation of data collection, storage, and analysis. In particular, it will provide a centralized depository of data, shortening the time it takes to prepare and generate business reports while ensuring their accuracy. Turning back to the FinAccess Survey, it has continued to be a reliable workhorse in our data stable. This being the 6th survey since the 2006 baseline. It remained faithful to the original principles of enhancing financial inclusion measurement, providing better understanding of the financial inclusion landscape over time, and informing other actors in the financial inclusion space. It was unique in a number of ways. Firstly, it was undertaken as the COVID-19 pandemic evolved and mutated. Secondly, it drilled down to the 47 administrative units, we call them counties, that constitute Kenya. Lastly, it covered all dimensions of financial access, usage, quality, and impact, including sustainable green finance and financial health. The survey's top-line findings were, first, the financial inclusion landscape was impacted by COVID-19, with overall financial access increasing to 83.7% of adults in 2021 from 82.9% in 2019, mainly driven by the use of technology. Secondly, the adult population that reported to be completely excluded from accessing any form of financial services or products increased to 11.6% in 2021 from 11% in 2019. This in part reflected the impact of COVID-19 restrictions that made it difficult for youth turning 18 years to take national identity cards, a prerequisite for accessing formal financial services. Third, the usage and quality of financial services and products continue to deepen on account of, among other factors, increased adoption of technology and innovations. Technology is playing a critical role in closing the financial inclusion gap among the genders and across the country. As I draw to a close, let me leave you with 3 key takeaways from the survey to reflect on and deliberate on. First, surveys such as this are a critical cog in translating the vision of being a data-driven organization into reality. This is indeed true for countries at different levels of financial inclusion. This is as true for Kenya, that has been on the financial inclusion journey for long, as it is for a country contemplating its first financial inclusion survey. For the pioneers, it is about moving beyond access to financial services to usage and quality. For countries at nascent stages, it is about understanding access to financial services and what needs to be done to accelerate this. Second, it's about collaboration. One entity cannot do this alone. We have, over the various rounds of our FinAccess surveys, increased the number of our national, regional, and international partners. As I earlier intimated, we acknowledge the very important role that AFI has played in the current survey. You continually need to cultivate the relationships with core and other partners in the public and private sector. In our case, we have had extensive interaction with our National Bureau of Statistics. We've also worked very closely with the financial FSD, and also other entities, indeed also commercial banks that are interested in the results of the survey. Over time, as the financial inclusion landscape changes, priorities for some of the partners may change, but the core partners must remain focused on the vision. Ultimately, the survey is about financial inclusion for the shared prosperity of our citizens. My third point is that surveys take time, effort, and resources. It has taken significant time, effort, and resources to learn the survey amidst turbulent storms and winds. Designing and conducting the survey during the pandemic presented novel challenges. In the midst of the pandemic, the health and safety of the teams conducting the survey remained paramount. We could not move at the pace we desired as the pandemic peaked and ebbed and containment measures were imposed and eased. But in the midst of all these challenges, the vision of financial inclusion for the shared prosperity of our citizens remained our beacon in a dark ocean. Last Wednesday, we launched our national payment strategy for 2022-2025. The strategy provides guideposts for the next chapter of Kenya's payment journey. In particular, it seeks to realize our vision of a secure, fast, efficient, and collaborative payment system that supports financial inclusion and innovations that benefit Kenyans. Let it be clear that without the FinAccess Survey, our national payment strategy would have been a weak document. We are at different stages of our respective financial inclusion journeys. For those who are starting on their financial inclusion survey journey, I urge you to take the plunge. We will be with you to ensure a smooth landing. For those already on the journey, let's continue working together, sharing experiences and learnings from each other. For this is ultimately about enhancing the lives and livelihoods of our people. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a productive FinAccess webinar.
Our sincere appreciation to the Honorable Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, and to our Executive Director for your kind and insightful words. Indeed, you really represent the DNA of AFI, right, in this collaborative approach. So we really are humbled and appreciate to make this event possible. Now, let us continue and allow me to briefly guide you through the planned agenda before we start the 3 sessions in the webinar. Session 1 will be led by Mr. Capitus Shironga, manager at the Central Bank of Kenya, responsible for the financial sector analysis in the research department that focuses on financial stability and financial inclusion. His session will focus in providing the overall context and main results of Kenya's 2021 FinAccess Household Survey, including the methodology and high-level results. After his presentation, a session of Q&A will be open. Now, after that, session 2 will be led by Dr. Amrik Heyer, Senior Research Specialist at the Financial Sector Deepen in Kenya, and her session will deep dive into the 2021 FinAccess Household Survey with key findings related to COVID-19 impact on financial health and resilience, with a focus in digital financial services and other relevant policies. Also, there will be a Q&A session after her intervention. Finally, session 3 will be led by Mr. Rajab Baruku, Head of ICT in the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. In his session, Rajab will share the data analytics tool and website created for sharing the 2021 FinAccess Household Survey, stressing the importance of proper determination of the key findings to be shared with key stakeholders in Kenya. After his presentations, we will also have a Q&A session. So feel free to use the chat to share your questions, your comments. This will really allow us to make a very interactive event. So without further ado, please let me introduce you to session 1 and to Mr. Capitus Chironga. Mr. Chironga is responsible for the financial sector analysis in the research department that focuses on financial stability and financial inclusion. He previously headed domestic market intelligence unit in financial markets departments and was a member of the governor's advisory team on financial inclusion and innovations. Mr. Chironga successfully guided the 2021 FinAccess Household Survey from instrument preparations to the launch of top-line findings report in December 2021. He has been involved in the previous FinAccess survey since 2013, Geospatial Survey of 2015, and various tracker surveys, as well as deep dive studies. An alumnus of Warwick Business School, University of Warwick, UK, where he studied Masters of Science in Economics and Finance, and the University of Nairobi School of Economics for Masters of Arts degree in Economics. He has also a Bachelor of Arts in Economics. Mr. Chironga, without further ado, the floor is yours. You have 25 minutes assigned to your session to allow for a brief session of question and answers. Welcome, Mr. Chironga. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Luis. I hope I can be heard.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you. Kate is the one moving my slides. Yeah, thank you, everyone. And at this moment, I want to thank AFI for working together to make this webinar take place. We are grateful for the support we've received, both technical and financial. And we are very happy to share our experience with the rest of the world, AFI network members, for we know that through sharing, we will be able to learn more as much as we give you more. So that's my presentation outline. Perhaps we move to the next one. In the introduction, we want to share with you the purpose of why we undertake actually these surveys, the partnerships which have made them successful, the methodology, the sample, survey demographics, which are very critical, as well as administration, which is where I believe most participants will want to understand how do we run these surveys. Next, please. In terms of the purpose, our interest or why we undertake these surveys, and particularly coming back to 2021, is we want to enhance, our aim is to enhance management, measurement of financial inclusion. This is very important in helping us to better understand the dynamics in the financial inclusion landscape, given the dynamics that actually take place over time. And why measurement? As Governor alluded to during opening remarks, a number of us, we are particularly maybe focusing on access dimension, and perhaps some have moved to usage. But more importantly is if you are having access to these financial services, are they serving you well? What quality of services are you receiving? What impact does financial products and services actually having on your life and livelihood? This is why understanding the dynamics in the financial inclusion landscape is very important. And therefore, we need to come up with indicators that actually help us to see whether all these dimensions of financial inclusion are actually well catered for. And more importantly also is we have various stakeholders from policymakers to private sector who want to get timely data that is more timely, data that is more current to reflect the dynamics in the financial inclusion landscape in order to help in decision-making and even in terms of investment as well as policy. So this is why it's very important for us to take these surveys 2 to 3 years in order to capture these developments. And that is well captured in the 2021 FinAccess Survey. The next one. Yeah, as Governor mentioned, and even in our report, these surveys are very expensive. So public-private partnerships are very key. In terms of financial contribution, for one entity alone or institution alone, it becomes quite expensive, especially if you're doing countrywide survey and given expansive geographical areas to be covered. Secondly, partnerships are very key in terms of sharing expertise, right from the instrument survey or the questionnaire. Sometimes you might think it's something which is very simple, but in terms of the flow of the questionnaire, to make sure that there are no contradictions, to make sure that it captures what is actually happening, we need expertise from different fields to bring together their minds. So partnership is very key, and also leveraging on technology. You may find that some partners are more advanced in terms of technology in how to conduct these surveys, and therefore coming together proved to be very useful. For 2021 FinAccess Survey, apart from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, who are the core mandate of data collection in the whole country, FSD Kenya brought on board very key people in terms of expertise. AFI brought on board both the review of the questionnaire, giving their thoughts, especially on green finance, but also the financial contribution. Their financial contribution was very invaluable in making sure that we had successful survey. We also have domestic financial sector regulators, capital markets authority, pension regulator, insurance regulator, as well as commercial banks and telecom companies. All these were very key partners in the success of our survey. Next. Now, in terms of the methodology, what is very critical to understand is that this being a cross-sectional survey, our interest, we want to come up with indicators which are very critical in explaining the 4 dimensions of financial inclusion. Those are usage, quality, impact, and access. Our population target here, we were looking at individuals who are 16 years and above. Why 16 years? Because these are people who are about to enter into financial inclusion, into formal financial services, and therefore they were very critical for us as our minimal age. And these people or these individuals should be living in a conventional household. Conventional means people who are living in the refugees and those who are internally displaced people were excluded from the survey. However, those who are living in temporary shelters, especially the nomadic areas, those were included because those are conventional shelters. And the selection was random and scientifically done. Proceed. In terms of the sample size, what is important to remember here is our domains were 50. The first domain is national. We look at what is the national representation. And then we looked at rural and urban. those are 3 domains, then the 47 counties or administrative units of Kenya. So those ones formed our domains, of which we drew 30,600 households based on Kenya Household Master Sample Frame. Now, before the 2018 survey, which we released in 2019, used what we call NACEP 5 framework. But when we conducted the census in 2019, there was a new framework which was developed, which is more representative, and this is the Kenya Household Master Sample Framework, which was used. And based on that one, we got a response rate of 85.6%. Perhaps you may be asking why not 100%, and we'll be able to see in the next slide why. Looking at the demographics, if I start with my slide on the right-hand side, which is the age distribution, a majority of Kenyans are young people, and therefore from this selection, about a majority, which are about more than 50%, they are between 18 years and 35 years of age. And these are very key constituent of financial inclusion landscape. They're actually the drivers of technology, and therefore investors and policymakers will find this constituent very key. Now, looking at our table in terms of the distribution, out of the 30,600 households, a majority of about 19,000 were rural area and 12,000 in urban areas. Perhaps I also want to mention that one will ask why eligible households. When you went to the field, you'll find that some households are not eligible. Either the structures were destroyed, others through migration or redevelopment of new structures. And therefore, we were able to get only 25,724 out of the targeted 30,600. Successful interviews in this case were 22,024. Why? Because we had some refusals. When you go to the field, you find the target, some respondents actually refused for an interview. Others may actually be sick. Others would have maybe traveled for a long period out of the sample period. And that brought our response rate to 85.6%. Further demographics, you look at female male distribution, which is the next slide. You realize that the next slide, female are about 52% in this survey, about 51%, sorry, and male were 49%, while rural urban distribution, 64.5% for rural and 34.5% for urban. So those are the demographics. And in terms of the administration of the survey, it's important to know in terms of human resource, we used about 60,000, actually 60 research assistants who are recruited by our Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And for quality assurance, they were supervised by 20 supervisors and 10 coordinators for the 90 days which the survey took place. The survey was administered through the computer-assisted personal interview, CAPI gadgets, through either English or Kiswahili, the main official and national languages. But where respondents could not be able to understand the two languages, we had interpreters for local languages to make sure that everything is properly captured. And the raw data was weighted to reflect the national demographics. Now, all these are the preparatory work towards conducting the survey. And now moving to key findings along the 4 dimensions of financial inclusion, we look at the next slide to show the main findings. The first chart gives us the overall financial access, which from Governor's opening remarks moved from 82.9% to 83.7%. What is interesting for us is the red line showing the uptick in exclusion rate, the 0.6 percentage points increase in 2021 compared to 2020. And I think we can, is there a way we can remove this picture? I want to show the chart on the left, on the right, sorry.
I think maybe it looks, Chirunga, I think it looks fine, right? For us, we look at the whole picture.
Okay. So I will also want to take control of the presentation, please.
Chirunga, do you want me to unshare?
I will want you to provide control so that I can control it.
Okay, sure. I'm going to unshare. Please share your own screen.
No. Sorry, just give me 1 minute.
Yeah, it is fine.
Yeah. So.
And in the meantime, while you set up the slides, Chirunga, it's very important what you mentioned on the languages, right? And really make sure the survey is in the proper language in the localities. So thanks for sharing this.
Okay. Thank you. Let me proceed. The chart on the right on access categories, what is very important to mention is the role of the formal inclusion and how it's actually contributing the overall inclusion of 83.7%. Now for the increase in exclusion, when you go to the next slide, you can look at the role of the youth and people who are above 55 years old. And that's why our argument of the impact of COVID on financial inclusion, increased financial inclusion was very key. The youth who are turning 18 could not be able to get formal documentations or identification documentation for them to get into the formal financial system. Most of the offices, administrative offices had been closed, and therefore they couldn't get national IDs for them to participate in the financial inclusion, formal financial inclusion services. And people are above 55, a number of them lost their jobs during this period. So if you look at the two numbers, they actually increased. They are much higher than compared to the rest. In terms of gender gap, as much as it has been narrowing, what I need to mention here is just, if you look at the chart on the right, a marginal increase, almost doubling percentage points increase in the gap between male and female in terms of exclusion. More female were excluded from financial services compared to male in 2021 FinAccess Survey compared to 2019. But in terms of narrowing gap, which is very important for us, the chart on your left, decline from 5.2 percentage points gap to 4.2. It's very encouraging. And we shall see why the role of technology in bringing that. I think another thing which you need to mention is the mobile money, the role of mobile money, perhaps maturity in financial inclusion may be explained by this. When you look at the change percentage point change from the baseline survey 2009, in 2021, only 2 percentage points increase. I will tell you that perhaps more innovation now is required for mobile money, just going beyond the access. In terms of disparities, particularly explained by exclusion, you find that there are two main drivers of exclusion. One is the income levels. The first row, which is defined by wealth quintiles. The lowest is the bottom 20%, and the highest is the top 20%. Now, the bottom 20% in terms of income levels explain 25% exclusion rate. And when you look at the age, 18 to 25 years also explain the highest exclusion rate. Now, for 18 to 25 years will also be the issue of unemployment, the issue of lack of documentation because of COVID, and the lower, in terms of the wealth quintiles, the most poor were also highly impacted by COVID. So also in terms of the counties, which we've actually, this is our first data point. The darkest points, we can see the highly included areas. These are areas which are economical, very strong, very good weather, more urban. But those which are sparsely populated, arid areas, you find that the inclusion rate is very low. And the next chart is actually the mirror, the opposite of the inclusion, which is exclusion. Areas which are highly excluded are those which are especially in arid and semi-arid areas, and especially far away from urban areas. So you could see the role of infrastructure, the role of amenities, and even the economic activities, how they relate to financial inclusion. The next dimension which our survey covered is usage, and in this case, we are looking at the actual usage of financial services, products, and providers, the frequency of actual usage, the duration, as well as the reasons why the public or respondents use or don't use given services or providers. And when you're doing analysis, we're looking at the demographics which inform the analysis are age, sex, education, residence, wealth quintile, and county. What is important to note here is we are saying that because individuals use these services in multiples. For example, you can be using mobile phone, you are using ATM, you are using a physical branch. We don't add them because one person is using these services at a go, so they are not additive. And if you look at our first chart there, the key message here is the role of mobile money and mobile banking in driving usage. And when you look at mobile money rising from 79.4 to 81.4 in 2021, and mobile banking moving from 40.8 to 44.1. Mobile banking moving from 25.3 to 34.4. Those were the key drivers of in usage of financial services. And we have on the extreme right a bar chart there called Fuliza. Fuliza is an electronic overdraft facility offered by one of our telco company, and which was launched in November 2019. And by the time we are doing the study 2021, already 18.3% of respondents are using it. It's a very innovative product which has picked up very fast, and therefore continue to provide usage for financial services. And for us to also to understand the role of mobile money, especially during COVID and informal, we looked at the frequency, daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. And if you are to look at 2021 versus 2019 daily usage, you see that mobile money usage increased from 12% to about 24%, which almost doubled. A similar scenario is witnessed in when you use informal groups. Now, these two are very key because in terms of liquidity, they are easily available. There was also government policy on COVID for people to use mobile money, but there are also transaction waivers on mobile money. So the two, when you look at them, in terms of high frequency usage, mobile money and informal groups became very key compared to the rest. But also it's important to note that People also consume these services in multiples, and therefore what we are saying more is preferred than less. Over time, more and more people are using both combination of informal and formal, not just one group alone. This chart I've explained previously, but I think what is important to mention is that the mobile banking is actually replacing or is kind of becoming more critical compared to brick and mortar. And at both levels, when you look at both rural and urban relationship or male-female, they are taking mobile banking much faster compared to traditional banking. And because this survey goes beyond banking, we are looking at other providers. And here what is important to mention is the blue line at the top, the decline in what we call National Hospital Insurance Fund. These are government facility for universal healthcare, but COVID actually made it difficult for people to use it more frequently. And therefore you could see a major decline there. The role of informal groups, these are family and friends. What is important to mention here is there's a group, the group or chama usage. If you see the green light in 2021, it actually increased to 34% from 30%. And then the role of family and friends. All the other indicators, when you look at them, they declined except those two. And during COVID, social networks and family friends became very key in terms of alleviating the impact of the pandemic. We also looked at in terms of the transaction devices, the role of cash. And you could see that actually cash is only 18% usage in Kenya, but people combine both cash and non-cash, which is digital. And more so rural area are more inclined towards cash. But it's important to mention that whether you're looking at rural or urban, cash still remains critical as much as the non-cash transaction is taking place. In terms of quality dimension, dear participants, it's important to look at, our concern is whether people understand whether they are getting quality services, and this was measured in terms of the charges, transaction charges, the system downtime, poor customer service, whether there was a loss of money. And just some of the highlights we picked are this, in terms of the major challenges faced during this 12th year was inability to access account due to internet or ATM or system downtown. This was the main one, the light blue one, followed by unexpected charges. And when you drill down to unexpected or unclear charges, we saw that our circles or cooperative unions and microfinance were the ones leading in terms of they were coming up with charges which were not clear to the users. So the regulator actually picked that one, and even the providers found these results very interesting for them in terms of dealing with the customer needs. It's also important to mention that for people to appreciate the quality of services, they must be aware of what kind of services they are actually getting. So the issue of the transaction cost, as well as the cost of financial service came out very important, very handy, and especially in terms of calculating the interest on amount of a loan acquired by a provider. So what we did here was you look at a borrower and ask the borrower, if you are given a certain percentage on a given maybe $1,000, what will you pay? So we realized that 49.3% of respondents in 2021 were able to answer correctly. They are able to know how much you'll pay back. So in terms of knowledge of cost of borrowing, it has gone up in 2021 compared to response rates in 2019. And in terms of the sources of financial advice or knowledge, family and friends became very important at 45%. And people also just relied on their self-knowledge self-knowledge as a source of advice or making personal instincts. And what is also important to note is that 63% of respondents, they have knowledge of transaction fees. And therefore, what will be worried, what will care most is actually the 34% remaining who have no knowledge of transaction cost. In terms of quality also, we looked at the household indebtedness. If you are borrowing from one point to another, are you able to pay? And if you are not able to pay, or how did you deal with the debt issues at household level? And that's what those 3 chapters are talking about. The first chart is looking at those who are not paid. The bar chart in green actually is a representative of all the blue. Those who never paid or paid late or paid less, which tells us that there was an issue of household indebtedness in 2021. And there are reasons why, if you go to the deeper study, you'll find reasons why people are not able to pay. And the other 2 charts, both at rural and urban level of male and female, tells us what people did. And the main thing was people had to deplete their savings, people had to do more work, people had to give up on other expenses in order for them to pay their debts. We also wanted we also looked at the impact, and in terms of the impact, we looked at financial health of the people. I know my colleague Amrik will go deeper, but it's important to highlight that one. In terms of, from this survey, people are more vulnerable in terms of food vulnerability or security in 2021 compared to 2019. And also putting food on the table was the main issue, followed by actually education, and putting food on the table became came out more prominently in 2021 compared to 2019. And therefore this highlights still the impact of COVID. And in terms of financial goals, there are mainly 3 goals: meeting day-to-day needs, experience shocks, maybe health shocks, and meeting the future goals or investment goals. So you realize that experience shock was the main one, increasing from 36 to 67%. And this may actually be related to explain the impact of COVID, because in the next slide, when you look at it, sorry, just to mention the last, the chart, the main issue is a health problem, which was reported at 31.8%, which was the highest. So you can be able to relate the 2 charts, experience shock, and as a result, it was coming from a health problem. Then in terms of what people did, solutions to their problems, the majority was actually informal solutions, which is very interesting, except for informal solutions, especially in terms of future investment needs, which means people rely on family and friends and groups or social networks to plan about the investments. And this is very important finding for policymakers. Then overall financial health actually declined from 39% when we started measuring it 2016 to 17. And when you look at the previous slides, which we were talking about, the experience people went through, we can actually explain this decline in financial health index. Financial health index is made up of the 3 sub-indices, which I've just explained: ability to manage day-to-day needs, ability to cope with the risks, and ability to invest in future livelihood. So those ones will give us the overall index, which actually showed a decline in 2021. And the last part is actually now whether the perception about financial situation, which you could see it worsened in 2021, and we are attributing that one also to COVID, so, and other localized shocks. So overall, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, FinAccess Survey is a major tool for us, both for policy and decision making, as well as private users. But what is important is to note that it's a very expensive venture to get into, and therefore strong partnerships are required, but it provides very rich data, which can explain the 4 dimensions of financial inclusion. And therefore, what I can do is to invite you to make use of this data, provide feedback so that we can be able to shape a financial inclusion journey going together. Thank you very much, and I welcome questions for provide answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chironga. This was quite insightful, and you covered all of the different dimensions of financial inclusion. You know, and I know this was a challenging because the amount of time is quite limited for such a deep breadth of this survey, right? That goes really through all of the different financial services, including insurance, but also in the different dimensions. So well, we really appreciate the sharing these results. And we have some questions from our audience. So one of the first one, I will pick just one about 2 or 3 questions, just because in the interest of time, but also we'll allow for at the end of the meeting, we will allow for also, if there's any further questions, we will allow for some Q&A as well. But there's a question on the here on the methodology used in terms of the random selection, that it was the presenter said random selection was used in XX number of households at the household level who was eligible to be interviewed, head of household or anybody above the age of 16. Secondly, how many interviews were you allowed to conduct at each household? Chironga, I don't know if you want to respond this, or we can also, you know,
maybe ask the second question. Respond to both.
Okay. Yes.
Luis?
Yes. The other question is, what kind of information do banks provide to the National Bureau of Statistics? What information was used from the Bureau in your analysis?
Sorry, Luis, I can't hear you. You are.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Luis, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
No, but I can't hear you well. You are very.
Oh.
Volume is extremely low.
Do you hear me now?
You are still far. Try.
Hello, do you hear me?
Well, we seem to have lost you, Luis.
I think it may be on your side.
Yeah, I think
can hear him.
Yeah, I can hear Luis loud and clear. Maybe from your side, Chironga?
Yeah, maybe we can share this in the chat.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I think we have some unstable internet this end.
Okay, no, it's okay. Do you hear me?
What you can do, you can you move to the next? You can hear us?
Yes, we can hear you well.
We can hear very clearly, sir. Thank you.
I am sharing some of the questions in the chat. Do you hear us?
Luis, we can hear you very well here in Kenya. You are clear.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. We can now. The question was on the first question. Sorry, you want to come back with the question?
Yes, the question is, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, the question is about the random selection. If what's the criteria to select the subjects in a household, and if there was if it was a head of household or if it was a random selection among the 16 or above adults in the household. And also a second question was if the interviews were allowed to conduct, how many interviews in a per household were allowed to be undertaken.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of the selection of the interviewer, when interviewer went to a household, first of all, you had to list all the residents or those who live there were above 16 years and above. And once you have listed whether it's a child or even a house help, the copy or the gadget could randomly pick a respondent. It may be a house help, it may be your brother or sister, so long as he's 16 years and above and has stayed there for 6 months and above, 6 months or more. So the copy was randomly picking. It not necessarily to be head of household. It could be the wife or the husband or a child or a house help. So that's how it was picking randomly. So that's the response I can give to you. Sorry, the second question I've missed slightly.
No, yes, I think that was the question, and if there was more than one adult, but I think it was also answered in the chat that it was just one adult per household, right?
Yeah, it was only one respondent per household.
Okay, thank you. Then there's another question on what kind of information do banks provide to the National Bureau of Statistics, and what if there was any information used from the Bureau of Statistics in your analysis?
The Bureau of Statistics, first of all, provides the framework, and two, they are the ones who are doing weighting because they provide the clusters. From the clusters, we're able to select to get the households. So in terms of the sampling frame, in terms of the weights allocated by rural, urban, gender, that's the role of the Bureau of Statistics. And therefore also in terms of, because they have statisticians across the country, cluster guides, who could show us where the households are. That was the role of Bureau of Statistics.
Okay, thank you. Okay, perfect. I think this is clear and it's really important. Then there's another. I think I will just issue another question before going to break, and then we can eventually respond to the questions in the chat in the interest of time. But there's another question from Nepal. Given your chart related to exclusion, what can be the reason that the old age people, after losing their jobs, they got excluded from the financial services?
Yes. What we found was especially the old age people. When COVID broke out, many of them they were vulnerable groups, and therefore, in terms of movement, became quite a challenge. They couldn't go out looking for jobs and so on. So, for those who lost their jobs, especially those who are working the informal sector, they could not be able to use or access any financial service for the period of the 12 months, because we are looking at 12 months period, and that actually explains 55 years plus, because especially those who are in informal sector, when we had lockdowns and travel restrictions, it became very difficult for them to even not only access a job, but even use a financial service. So that is the response we were getting from the field.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chinonga. The last question, just before ending very quickly, how was the issue of individuals having multiple accounts with different financial services providers addressed in this survey? So well, we might understand that some individuals might have multiple accounts, but I think that the survey will capture that, right? If they have more than one account.
Sorry, come again. The volume had.
Sorry, I will share it in the chat.
Yes.
How was the issue of individuals having multiple accounts with different financial service providers addressed in this survey?
Okay. Yes. So, in one of the charts where we are saying we don't add, they are not additive, because I might be having 3 accounts from the same bank or different banks. I also have an account with a bank, account of mobile. We only look at individual per service, and we actually don't add. And it's also important that in terms of the number of accounts, is more of a supply side and issue. So we did not add the number of accounts. We just looked at individual respondent, whether we have a bank account or not how many accounts do you have, or how many mobile accounts do you have. Do you have a mobile account? Yes. So we did not ask how many mobile accounts you have.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. This is basically very clear. Okay, well, I think we want to thank Capitus Chironga for his insightful presentation. Thank you so much. If you can please stay, maybe we might have some additional questions at the end of the meeting, and it would be really great to have you. But thank you so much for sharing this, the main outcomes of this survey. And thank you so much for this first session. Chironga, it was really insightful. And now let's go to the session 2, deep dive into FinAccess Survey 2021 findings on COVID-19 impact on financial health and resilience, with a focus indeed on financial services and other policies. So we are really lucky to have also for this session Dr. Amrik Heyer, who is Senior Research Specialist at the Financial Sector Deepening Kenya, FSD Kenya. Dr. Amrik Heyer has developed and led a wide-ranging research program on inclusive finance at the FSD Kenya since 2010, working closely with government and private sector. Amrik focuses on applying and communicating data and analysis to support policy change and innovation. From her earlier research work on gender and markets in central Kenya, Amrik has a particular interest in forging closer links between finance and the real economy to support inclusive growth, especially for women and MSMEs. Amrik, thanks so much for joining us today and share some of the key insights from the 2021 Kenya FinAccess Household Survey. The floor is yours, and well, you have about 25 minutes, and then after that we will have a session of Q&A. Welcome. Thank you. And you can share your slides.
Great. Thanks very much. Yes, I will do that. Are you able to see the presentation? Oops. Yeah, there we go.
Not yet, but maybe.
Okay, let me try again then. Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Thank you again, Lewis, and good afternoon, distinguished guests and colleagues. It's a great honor to be part of this forum. I just wanted to start by saying that FSD has been collaborating with the Central Bank and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics since 2005 to develop Kenya's demand-side data ecosystem, starting with conducting the first FinAccess survey, which was launched in 2006. And this is a very important partnership for us in terms of our dedication to developing an inclusive financial sector that supports Kenya's long-term development goals. We believe that demand-side data has a very important part to play in that, And we are also very sort of lucky to have such an innovative and forward-looking policy scene and policymakers and government to invest so strongly in demand-side data. So in terms of my presentation, I will be focusing briefly on the impact of COVID-19 on household resilience. Chironga's already covered some of that. And then touching briefly on digital finance, with a window also onto MSEs and yes, and in terms of opportunities for digitization to improve resilience and growth. And then I will propose some areas for discussion and thought as we move forward. Okay. So I just wanted to start by saying that, I want to recognize the real level of investment and innovation that's gone into developing these new frameworks in FinAccess to capture financial inclusion beyond simply measuring access and usage. And these have been very important, in policy terms, in terms of our ability to actually understand the relevance of finance and its impacts on people's lives. I won't go into the frameworks here in detail, but there's a lot more detail available on our websites. For now, I really want to focus on the findings because we have a fairly brief period of time. So I'm going to move straight into some of the data that Chiranga has already presented. But essentially, I want to emphasize that financial health in Kenya has been declining since mid-2015 when we first started measuring it. And this, as you'll note, does predate COVID-19. And so we need to recognize that these trends are really part of a broader set of structural issues within the economy, and they're sort of testimony to the fact that we do need to do more to invest in and support inclusive growth at the lower end of the economy. This is also reflected in the perceptions of people that we interviewed, where adults have sort of said that their personal financial situation has worsened year on year since 2015. And that's quite a sobering set of curves there. The red curve represents some people saying that their financial situation has worsened, and the green curve represents people who say that their financial situation has improved. We also find that median income across most demographics, that's across age and gender, household location and livelihoods, has also been falling since 2015. And focusing now on the COVID-19 era, as I'll call it, the period between 2019 and 2021, we can also see that people are increasingly dependent on others for their main source of income, and also on more insecure forms of livelihood, such as casual labor. So that, again, it doesn't do much to boost one's possibility of earning higher incomes. Also, during the pandemic period, perhaps not unexpectedly, we've seen the level of shocks or incidents of shocks experienced by the population increase substantially. So whereas in 2019, 36% of the population said that they had experienced a shock in the previous year, in 2021, this rose to 67%. It's almost doubled. And of course, major shocks include, obviously, as one would expect, we do see quite a significant rise in people experiencing health shocks, and also rather soberingly, the death of a relative or family member, which has almost doubled in the pandemic period. But we also see that the biggest shock that has affected household finances, and again, it's testimony to these underlying structural features of the economy that do need to be addressed, is the rising cost of living. Just to quickly segue into the use of finance, I mean, we should be asking ourselves the question of, has finance helped people to deal with these shocks? And again, we find that to some extent, I mean, informal finance, which is particularly social network finance, that has been very much enabled by services such as mobile money, which is used for remittances across social networks, we see that that is still quite important, but it has reduced in importance between 2019 and 2021. And instead, we see there's been a big rise in people relying on non-financial strategies to address shocks, such as cutting back on expenses, seeking more work, selling assets, and so forth. So I guess in summary, we are really seeing in the COVID-19, particularly in the COVID-19 period, we're seeing this longer term decline in household economies, on top of which the pandemic then, also hit households very hard, has really taken its toll on household well-being. We've seen a significant rise since 2019 in the proportion of the population who report going without food, sometimes or often, going without medicine when it's needed, and having a child sent home for lack of school fees. So I guess we need to ask ourselves the question of, really, can finance play a role in view of these really big challenges across the economy? Can finance play a role in helping to lift financial health and improving livelihoods and productivity? And particularly, what is the promise of digital finance, given that Kenya is really a global leader in this space? Well, first, perhaps on a positive note, despite the sluggishness and uptake of formal accounts in that pandemic period, which is probably not surprising given the limited levels of liquidity, people being very constrained by rising cost of living on the one hand, lack of movement on median incomes on the other hand, and susceptibility to shocks. So we have not seen a huge growth in the uptake of formal accounts. In fact, somewhat the reverse, but we have seen an increase in the daily relevance of formal finance. And you can see this from the chart on the left. I don't know if it's your left or it's still your left probably. And, particularly with mobile money, the use of mobile money, daily use of mobile money has increased significantly. But the daily use of other services such as SACCO services, bank services, mobile banking and so forth has also increased since 2019. And we also see that the use of cash as the main mode of payment for various payment use cases has declined, and it's been replaced by increasing use of mobile money in the light blue, and even bank transfers there in the dark blue. And that applies to paying monthly bills, paying school fees, paying money to government, and in the form of tax and for other sort of services, and paying daily expenses. So particularly, I want to draw our attention to paying daily expenses, because although we had a strong digital financial ecosystem in 2019, digital finance was hardly used at all to pay for one's daily groceries, one's daily expenses. Whereas in 2021, we see it's being used by 19% of the population as their main payment mode. Digital finance has also helped bridge the gender divide, as we've seen from Chironga's presentation and the comments from the governor. But we do still see a gap here, particularly in the more sophisticated use of digital finance, access to smartphones, daily use of digital finance, where men have, a substantially more usage of digital finance in these contexts, or access to sophisticated financial infrastructure compared with women. But we also need to remember this is in a context where women, and actually increasingly men, still rely primarily on informal finance to meet their financial needs. And in this particular case, I'm focusing on meeting on the financial goals, financing financial goals. So here we see that over half of the female population under 30 use informal mechanisms to meet their financial goals and aspirations, and really a significant percentage of women over 30 as well. For men over 30, there's more of a balance in terms of use of formal and informal financial instruments to meet their goals. But for young men, and whether this is because of their age or whether this is an increasing trend, you know, we see that since compared with 2019, they've become increasingly informalized in their financial strategies. Going back to digital finance, one thing that we do need to be very aware of is that access to digital financial infrastructure is uneven. So we see this particularly across counties, where in different counties, we see sort of varying levels of access to smartphones versus non-smartphone technology. And, you know, also people who have no access whatsoever to any form of mobile device. As the economy becomes more digitized, it's obviously going to be increasingly important to bridge this digital divide in order to boost livelihoods and income. And we can see here that across the various livelihood categories, employment, people who own their own businesses, casual laborers, agriculturalists, and people who depend on others for their source of livelihood, we see quite a variance in use of and access to digital tools. So whereas most people have a mobile money account, and we actually have a fairly high proportion of active users of mobile money, when it comes to daily use or ownership of smartphones, we see a bigger divide. And that's going to become increasingly important, and it can also become a driver of poverty and you know, a lack of ability to grow one's income at the lower end of the economy. So now briefly, I want to turn to MSEs just to give us a bit more food for thought in terms of how can digital finance potentially support growth and resilience. Firstly, who are MSEs? Well, they are you know, micro and small enterprises, of which 57% are women-owned, and that's very important because businesses provide a really important livelihood stream for women who do not have such high levels of access to formal employment compared with men. We also see that many of them are wholesale retail traders, and that 99% of businesses captured in the FinAccess survey are either micro or small. We also see that the percentage of people earning their income from business has unfortunately reduced since 2019, again, likely because of the pandemic. Now, I also want to draw our attention, again, with respect to the pandemic, to another innovation in the FinAccess suite. Together with our colleagues at the Central Bank and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, we decided to undertake a COVID-19 household MSE tracker survey at the behest of the governor, in fact, to see how small firms were faring during this period. And this was based on a telephone survey, and it was also based on the FinAccess sample. So we took a proportion of the sample who said that they earned their livelihood as business owners from 2019, and we followed their fortunes through the period of the pandemic. So for that subsector of the MSE population, we were able to track their revenue, finding that it really dipped very, very strongly in the early stages of the pandemic in the light of economic restrictions, and is slowly climbing. But we still see here from the dark blue parts of these pies that many businesses are not even able to earn 50% of what they were earning in 2019. Customer demand is the biggest challenge. People simply don't have liquidity to consume. So businesses are really sort of suffering from that. And the result has been a rise in business closures and also a rise in food insecurity for MSE households. Also, perhaps partly instigated by COVID-19, we find that business formalization has it remains low and has even declined since 2019. So many businesses are still not registered with the government, and many do not keep records, even digital records. Few businesses have a till number, but very few have a business account, a bank account in the business name, or are members of associations and so forth. And that clearly is a barrier, going to be more and more of a barrier to the sort of growth of businesses and also even to their engagement with the financial sector. However, you know, the picture with regard to formalization in terms of finance is quite different. Most business owners are highly digitized. 93% own a mobile phone, and nearly half of these own smartphones. Many have access to the internet, of course, through their smartphones. Yes, I think that's all I want to say about that slide. But also, many businesses are using digital channels to reach customers. And again, we saw an increase in the use of digital channels in the COVID-19 period. Still quite reliant on SMS and phone calls, mobile phones, but also increasingly relying on social media and even online stores. And we're likely to see this increasing over time as well. And the use of mobile money for business payments increased significantly between 2019 and 2021, from 11% in 2019 to 36% of businesses in 2021 who said that they were receiving and using mobile channels for business payments. So all of that is testimony to the increasing level of sort of formalization or digitization and you know, use of formal finance by businesses. And it represents a huge opportunity, obviously, to use these kinds of tools to promote business growth. However, despite this, businesses do still mainly rely on social networks for business finance. Assistance from friends and family is still the top source of starting capital. And for operating capital, businesses mainly rely on reinvesting their business profits. But we do see some signs of use of digital tools among the top sources of finance for business. And this is particularly relating to savings, and interestingly, savings on a mobile wallet, on mobile phones, or savings through mobile banking. The main reasons for this are cited as convenience and also the fact that these services are more suited to the needs of businesses. In relation to loans, only 11% of MSEs said that they had taken a loan for business purposes in 2021. But of these, half of them, nearly half, 43%, did this in order to expand their businesses, showing that, you know, loans are kind of very important, again, for business growth, potentially. And we need to understand why businesses are not more businesses are relying on formal sector loans to promote business growth and expansion. You know, what are these barriers? Is it cost? Is it the terms on which loans are delivered? Is it the fact that they're so short term? Potentially, you know, we need to dig into the reasons behind this. And finally, I mean, just going into the main challenges faced by business owners, fewer customers, as I've mentioned, increasing costs of supplies, limited access to credit and capital, customers not paying back on time, which compromises liquidity, difficulty in getting licenses and permits and so forth. We need to ask ourselves, in the context of these wide range of challenges, how can finance play a role? How can finance help? I mean, clearly, if there's a need for increased access to credit and capital, that's a core role for finance. But finance can also help with bridging some of these liquidity elements, you know, and helping, you know, businesses to manage these increasing costs of supplies and also, you know, lack of payments from customers in a timely manner. So there's clearly a role for finance here. And I guess the challenge for us is really to innovate and think of new ways in which finance can play a more significant role, not just for MSEs, but at all levels of the population. So just to close here, I just wanted to ask the question of what are the implications of what we've seen, you know, the reduced resilience of households and the squeezed liquidity that we're seeing both for households and MSEs in terms of their ability to use finance and the potential role of finance in addressing these issues. Well, firstly, I mean, we see that in this particular context of reduced resilience, households' financial strategies will increasingly be geared towards risk mitigation rather than growth. have we got the right tools to help households to manage these risks? Are we focusing merely on, providing credit for growth? I mean, what sort of tools are we developing to help households to manage risks? We also see that in this context of very squeezed liquidity, are households going to be able to afford to buy financial products? Will we see a retreat into the informal sector, as we already seem to be seeing with younger men? But we're also clearly seeing opportunities to build on this extraordinary digital infrastructure that Kenya has, and this increasing use and appetite for digital tools to reduce the cost of finance, to improve trust, and to develop tailored financial solutions for households and MSEs. And then I just want to close with the comment that, robust demand side data is so important in providing us with the means of spurring these kinds of innovations and enabling us to better serve households and MSEs, as well as better understanding their challenges. We can't always see that through supply side data or macroeconomic data. So I just want to underline the richness of these surveys really in providing us with a window to improve really the future prospects for households and MSEs in countries like Kenya. Thank you very much. Back over to you, Lewis.
Thank you so much, Amrik. Indeed, was very insightful, and also was I think that your presentation was very complementary to the previous presentation, because you provided some of the insights of actually the vulnerabilities of the households during this difficult period, right? I think it was really impressive also the way that you have been able to connect also the opportunities of finance to help the livelihoods. I think this is I think in the back of all of our minds as policymakers and regulators, that's one of the key questions, right? How can finance really improve the livelihoods of the population in different contexts, including MSEs, but also on individuals? And I think that the survey and another initiatives have been able to answer that this really difficult question, right? Also, it's really relevant the insights in terms of the gender gap and how it has been reduced, but still there's a prevalence in terms of the usage of informal financial services by women. I think that's also something relevant to consider, right, for the policymakers and also for financial service providers in terms of these gaps, but also opportunities, right, that have not been met. And in terms of I think many of us, I think almost everyone will agree that the MSEs are really one key aspect for spurring growth, right? Economic growth and resilience in the economies, right? Especially during these times, and really drilling down and identifying where some of the bottlenecks. I think this is very, very important. So thank you so much for this presentation. And well, we have some questions, so I will go briefly to some of them because I think they are relevant. First of all, there's one. Would you by any chance have insights why the appetite for formalization is low? Well, this is and do you have statistics on the usage of bank services such as apps and internet banking for daily transactions? This might come, I don't know, I'm sure that it captures, the demand side survey captures some of this, but maybe also from the supply side, right? As mentioned previously by the governor, in terms of these new tools that are being developed for also capturing data from the supply side. But please, Amrik, I want to.
Yes, just in relation to those two questions, Lewis, I mean, why is use of formal finance still relatively low? Again, I mean, you know, we see a very extensive use of formal finance. I mean, there's, you know, we have very high levels of access to formal financial tools, but I guess their use in terms of meeting core financial needs, like dealing with shocks, managing your day-to-day expenses, investing in your goals, that is still relatively low and really dominated more by informal sector or by non-financial strategies. So why is that? I mean, I think, you know, one of the primary things has got to be, you know, lack of liquidity to be able to afford and to use financial tools regularly to address those needs. But it's also the design of the tools themselves. I mean, you know, are we designing tools that are appropriate in helping different segments of the population who have different needs, after all, you know, to address their needs in a tailored manner? And the information universe that is now available through digitization should help us to develop these tailored solutions. But do we have the enabling environment? Do we have the market structure to spur and stimulate that level of innovation? Are the incentives in the market really aligned to promoting that level of innovation and reducing the costs of using finance? I guess that would be my comment there. Sorry, the second question was on the statistics of use of bank services and internet banking for daily transactions. Yes, we do have this data in the survey, and I think on one of my slides you could see the sort of level of bank usage for daily transactions, but it's broken down much further if you go into the database itself. So yes, we do have that data.
Thank you. And well, there are some other questions. I will very quickly. There's one, do you see any relation in access to digital finance and increasing indebtedness and defaults? And given most of the young respondents said that they use loans in business growth, is the growth of business reflected in other statistics too?
So levels of indebtedness, sure I'm going to get into trouble here, but I mean, clearly, you know, the more you engage with the financial sector, the more you're going to be able to take advantage of its opportunities, but also be prey, as it were, to its potential risks and pitfalls. So this is part of a sort of a feature of having a deeper financial sector, but it also really it's a call to action as well, you know, particularly for policymakers, to actually really sort of embed, you know, the appropriate market conduct and consumer protection to protect consumers against, you know, this increasing susceptibility to debt and default. But this is not only due to using financial services. I mean, as we've seen, you know, when we've got a situation where median incomes haven't changed for the last 5-6 years, and there's increasing susceptibility to shocks and high cost of living, you know, you're going to have so much pressure on people's finances that, you know, with or without increased use of formal finance, you may still have seen high levels of debt even within the informal sector, just because people are under so much strain. So I think it's a bit of both. I think that, you know, that there is going to be more susceptibility to debt and default because of the use of formal loans. At the same time, I think it's also a feature of really strained liquidity across the population. And then there was the use of credit by young people? Sorry.
Yeah. Most of the young respondents said that they use loan in business growth. Is the growth of business reflected in other statistics too?
So we don't have, I mean, in the FinAccess Survey, we don't actually measure the growth of businesses as such. I think we would need to look to the National Bureau of Statistics for that kind of information. What we measure more is the use of finance to support businesses, but we can't necessarily see the impacts of that usage in terms of the growth of those businesses. However, we do actually have a very interesting study on at the moment at FSD Kenya, which is the Small Firms Diaries, where we're collecting very, very detailed cash flow data on a sample of businesses across Kenya, and where we, over a period of an entire year, and there we will have very rich data on how finance actually does support or not business growth. So yeah, there are lots of other data sets on businesses that could be tapped into for that.
Oh, this is very interesting. Thank you. We will really look forward to learn more about this in the future. Yeah, the diaries on the small businesses. I think it's also something that very, very important. So there are some other questions, but maybe we can look forward to respond them in the chat, or maybe at the end of the whole session. So first, well, thank you so much, Amrik Heyer, and thank you so much for the FSD Kenya for this important intervention. I think we really learned a lot tonight. And now, without further ado, let me now go to the third and last session of the day. This is also a very important aspect that we wanted to be showcased. And well, please let me first of all introduce Mr. Rajaf Baruku, who is head of ICT in the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Mr. Baruku has over 20 years of experience in integrated systems design and management, including 10 years business experience in information systems, mathematics, statistics, probabilities, stochastic processes, and education. Mr. Rajaf Baruku holds a Master's of Science in Information Systems, a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics, Statistical Modeling, Statistical Programmer, and he's highly experienced in data analysis using a variety of statistical tools, project management, and software development, including expertise in relational database and web development. Mr. Rajab has been quite involved in the development of this 2021 FinAccess Household Survey in Kenya, and he will walk us through this section that is on the demo on data analytics tool and website of FinAccess Survey, which is also a very important step in terms of the data collection process. It's not only about collecting data, but also about disseminating and using this data, right? So Rajaf, thank you so much for joining tonight, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luis. I hope you can hear me very well.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, greetings to everyone, and welcome to this session. I think a lot has been done by my colleagues, Chironga and Amrik. That was great work, and I think mine is just to try and see a paradigm shift in how we're gonna present this data to you. So what we have done, next slide, what we have done at Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is try and host this data so that you are able to use it in a variety of ways. So how do you access our website? You can see at the left right-hand corner, you can see there knbs.or.ke. I think in the charts, my colleague Lucania will type it there so that you can get the URL correctly. When you join it, you'll be able to see different sections of the website, and one of them is the data sharing platform. Here you'll be able to see quite a variety of data portals that we have shared with you, one of them being FinAccess. Next slide. So when you click on FinAccess, it will take you to this slide, and on this slide, it's like an introduction. On the left hand side, you'll see a menu on the different major indicators that we are looking at. And one of them you can see starting with the access, then you have usage, you have quality, we have impact, we have gender gaps, rural, urban gaps, the methodology that Chironga took us through, and the other reports and data sets. So this will be found on onset on this particular homepage. And we've also put there some little statistics that you'll be able to see. Like already you are seeing an inclusion map on the formal, and you can see that Nairobi City is highly included, and the least included is West Pokot County, which with 47%. We have put some little statistics on usage and the such. So from just looking at it, you can already start making your conclusions as you go on. Next page. On the next slide is an in-depth that I went into the financial access. And here I was trying to look at access by service type. As you can see, a breakdown at the top there, you can break this data down in terms of sex, residence, livelihood, education, wealth, or age. And already I know Chironga has talked about this, and he was saying that for 2021, the total inclusion was about 84 and you can see that was formal inclusion, and you can also see, and in one slide, you are able to see different color, different years, so you can actually start seeing some trends. You can follow some trends, and you are able to select which years you want to include in, and at what particular point. And you can also break down this data, like you're going to see in the next slide. You break this down data. You can next slide, please. So you can see that you are able to break down this data in terms of maybe female access and also male access. And now it goes to this particular variable. So you can actually do your in-depth and try to see what has been the trends since 2006 up to now. So you can see how female access has been becoming more formal and formal as time grows on, and related to the male. Yeah. So this is generally how we are putting it. So when you delve in like this, of course, it only picks 1 year. So you can see I've only picked in 2021. Next slide. So here is access by residents. So again, now you can see rural access. You can try to also see urban access, and you're seeing that rural access has also really improved if you look at the graph down there. So you can see how it has been rising since 2006 up to now. It has gone up from 26% in the rural to 79%. If you look at the urban, you can see that rapid access that was been there between 2006 to 2013, and then it has tried to stabilize at that particular point. And maybe this is what Chironga was trying to attribute to in terms of maybe financial inclusion. Have we reached the apex or not? So this can also give you that particular kind of figurative image for you to try and analyze further. Next slide. If you look at this slide, it now talks about the livelihood. And we are talking about financial access by livelihood category. And here we looked at about 5 different livelihood styles. We have got those who are employed. We have got those who have got own business. We have got those who are casual employees. We have got those who are in agriculture. We have got also those who are dependents. So the graph I've shown down here, you can see from the agriculture side point of view, what has been this impact of financial inclusion. You can see that in 2013, we had about 66% who are formally included, but now you can see the number, the percentage has gone slightly higher to 84%. So so you can actually break it down now to the various. So if you clicked on casual, it will give you a different graph, and you'll see how it has all been going. Next slide. Again, here we are now looking by data by education level. This is in 2021. We have got those who have got no education, financial inclusion being around 64%. Those with primary education, financial inclusion being around 84% in 2021. Secondary education at 85%. Tertiary education at about 99%. And again, you can see the trend. Let's say here I've chosen the primary. You can see in 2013, they were at 64%. And right now, 2021, it's at 84%. So we can see the increase that and how the impact is going on. Next slide, please. Here now, again, we're also looking at the wealth quintile. And in 2021, we are assessing from the lowest to the highest. You can see the lowest inclusion, formal inclusion is at 64%. And the highest is at 95%. Again, I was just looking at the graph here, and I'm trying to analyze the lowest to see what has been happening since 2013 to now. So you can also see that increment from 33% in 2013 to 64% in 2021. So still, even at the lowest level of wealth, you can see there's that kind of impact that is actually happening. Next slide, please. This is the age. We are looking at the financial access by age and the age groups that we were given by Chironga. And I think you can now see clearly what has been happening. You can see the age groups. Those who are over 55 are at 79%. Those who are the highest percentages are between the age of 26 to about the age of 55. And you can see this is mostly the youth that are in this, and maybe these are those who are in the financially, their employment, most of them. And you can see that they are almost over 90% financially included. So we are giving you these diagrams, and yeah, you are able to ascertain how this is going. So next slide, I'm talking about now the data and the data sets. So we took the data and we tried to play around with it and to be able to come with those with those visualizations. And we've also given you a chance to get these data sets. And here we have placed all our data sets in one point, all the way from 2013 to 2021. And you can actually come in, visit, and access this data, and also do your own visualization. We have put different formats. You can see Excel format, you can see SPSS. We have got also the questionnaire, some of the presentations that you are doing. You have the manual, it's there. So you'll be able to actually see a lot on how it is. Even the report that Chironga shared with us earlier on is also here. So you'll be able to get most of these tools here. And we keep on actually adding this data and also more visualizations as time go on. So I like at this moment maybe to just go share a live screen of the website so that you are able to also see from my point of view. Aban, if you could stop sharing. Yeah, thank you. Let me try to share a screen. Louise, I'll take like maybe 2-3 minutes, so I'll not take most of your time. This screen, if you're seeing it, is the website of Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And as I said, it is www.knbs.or.ke. And if you scroll down this screen, you should be able to see what I was saying. You'll come to one of these. Where you'll get a lot of data that we produce. So the most important is for us right now is the FinAccess, which will be able to access at that particular point. I wanted just to click on this screen. So if I clicked on this, it will open up this FinAccess page, and you'll be able to see what I was talking about. On this page, as I was saying, on the home page, you'll be able to see access financial. You will be able to see usage. A few of our what we are just using as introductory notes that you could actually see on a glance. You'll be able to see access. You'll be able to see quality. You'll be able to see impact, and Amrik has done quite a good job when she was talking about impact. So in access, if you were to click on access, it will take you to the page of access. Of course, there will be a few definitions here and there, like what is formal, what is non-formal, what is informal, what's excluded. And we are trying to make sure that we are on the same page in trying to understand when we talk about this. Our page will populate here. Of course, our internet in Kenya is a little bit slow, but I think it has now come. You're able to see our pages. And you can scroll up and see this as we were talking about it. In here, yeah, there's also a map that has come. I remember talking about this map. And again, when you point to a particular county like that, you can see it has brought you some little information. This is Marsabit County, and it can tell you that 78.4% of the people were formally financially included. I said Nairobi was the highest, and it's at 95.0%. The least was West Pokot at 58%. So you can actually see all this in a glance, and there is more. Even the informal inclusion, informal, you can see here that the leading one, although it was the least included informal, but now it is the leading in the informal way, because that 1% of them are actually using the informal ways. And Western Gishu County is just at 1%. This is the least. So we have tried to put this in a glance so that you're able to see. Even if you are to come here to see the exclusion map, again, you'll see those who are excluded. The highest is Garissa County, and the least is actually Nairobi County with only 3%. This is the capital city of Kenya. Of course, so there is a lot of data that you have put here, and then there is also that graphical access by county and sub-regions. So we have also ordered for you here, and you are able to see from that particular point. So I just wanted to at least to come into this particular page so that you can appreciate how much you'll be able to get when you visit our page. We are also comparison, that we put a comparison here with like a regional comparison. So you can see how Kenya is behaving in the region compared to other countries. So if you look at Kenya, we are at 83% included, and I think South Africa is at 90%, and this is by the year 2018. Seychelles, I think this is Seychelles, is at 95%, and I think is doing very well in this particular region. But compared to, if you look at those who have done this kind of survey, you will see that Kenya is actually faring on very well, and I think we are number 3 in the region. And we've also put other statistics here so that you can also see how we are faring in the region. All this data, of course, you can get it in different ways. If you wanted to get this data, you can actually click here to download it, or you can actually use that button there to share it out. And so you are free to come in and access. On the left here, these are different indicators that you are looking at, the major topics that you are looking at, and you can actually come in and try to find out what is there. What I want to say is that we keep on improving this dashboard, and all the time is that we let you, if there's new data, we keep on posting there. So keep on visiting the site. In terms of the reports and data set, if you are to click on reports and data set, of course, it will bring you quite a number of reports here, the way I was saying, and you can see all of them there. So you can actually visit and find quite a number of these reports, starting all the way from 2009. I think up to there, I must have now talked into everything that I've shown you, and you are free to come in and also make your own visualizations, get the data, mine it, and use it the way you want. And anywhere you feel that we need us to improve, or maybe you need more help, we're always free, and we are ready to assist you as Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Thank you so much. Back to you, Luis.
Thank you so much, Rajaf. This has been very useful, I think, and we'll congratulate also for the effort, right, and investment on not only on developing these reports and these insights, but also sharing this in a more interactive platform, right, to expand also the audience and users of these results. I think this is extremely important, especially because I think as policymakers and regulators, we want really to make a better good of use of the data, right? And this is the dissemination process. It's as important as the collection and the analytics of the data, especially to expand to different audiences, right? And users, not only policymakers and regulators, but also financial service providers, social in the social sectors, in the development sectors, right? To also pinpoint and maybe identify opportunities, right, for them to implement some of these policies and some other solutions, right, in terms of livelihoods and financial inclusion. So thanks so much. I have just one question from my side, a more practical question in terms of more or less what is the investment, right, in terms of time, in terms of human resources to develop such a tool, right? Because I think many of us in our respective countries are interested also to expand this dissemination process. So if you can just briefly provide some insights, if possible.
Yeah, thank you, Luis. For sure, you need people to be committed to this for you to be able to come up with this tool. Number one, I would say that you need your subject matter specialist to be on board, because we need to have the report ready, the data having been cleaned and up, and it's okay. Once it is done that, we need to also have some bit of capacity in terms of the visualization tools. We have got very different types of visualization tools that you can use. For us, we are using Tableau, and it's also a good tool. And I think we want to thank FSD for having supported us so much in this particular area in terms of training, because we needed to develop also capacity in-house. Number three is that you also need to take care of your IT team, if you have one, or if you need to outsource, of course, because these are the people who are going to help you maintain the site and keep it running. So that's the areas that I'll say we need to concentrate on as of now. And this, for now, I think there's no problem. We are ready here, and if we are asked to share our knowledge, we can actually share out with you people. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rajab. Thank you for this answer, and you know, that this is, I think, absolutely important, and well, we look forward also to explore with more time this site, this website, and go through it, and I think now we are overrun from the time we have planned. So I want to thank all of the participants, and also the speakers and the audience for staying so a bit more at the time provided. So first of all, I want to thank for all of the engaging questions to the audience, and also the insightful responses and from our distinguished speakers. Indeed, an exercise as complex as a financial inclusion demand side survey is something that all over the world has a high value, right? A high value to drive the decision making process, not only for financial policymakers and regulators, but also to inform and guide other key stakeholders, right, in the implementation of these policies. As I mentioned, the financial service providers, social sector, the development institutions. And well, I think we're up to close. As mentioned, we will share all of the materials. We will record. This is recording, so we will share also this recording, and we will also, if there's any further question, please let us know, and we will make sure to make these questions through our distinguished speakers today. So, well, I will do now the closing, because we are already out of time. But well, first of all, on behalf of AFI and the executive director, we want to thank today, first of all, the presence and a keynote speech of the governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, as well as the representatives of the three institutions in Kenya who have led the 2021 Kenya FinAccess Household Survey, the Central Bank of Kenya, the Financial Sector Deepening Kenya, and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And we want to also thank the engagement of all of the AFI network that has been present today. Your active participation and engagement in these events is part of the DNA of the AFI platform for knowledge exchange and policy development. We also want to thank our interpreters in Spanish, French, and Portuguese. You also allow us to build bridges across and all over our network. So thank you so much. And well, we now officially want to adjourn the CBK AFI webinar on conducting demand-side surveys, the case of Kenya's FinAccess Survey 2021 in the COVID-19 era. Thanking and appreciating your presence today, and hoping this exchange has been useful for your own implementation. Thank you, stay safe, and we all look forward to meet soon in the next AFI event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.